welcome to another episode of the Chaos Chronicles. I'm Jess, and we have Trent back again today.
Hello.
Today we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Brandon Swanson. Before we get too deep into things, though, just a reminder that our links to our social media are down below, so feel free to go and follow all of those. Our email is also listed down there, so feel free to shoot us an email if you have any recommendations or just want to say hi. All right. So, Brandon Swanson. This one is pretty close to home.
Yeah,
actually.
literally.
Yeah. We're in the Twin Cities area, so it's just south of us.
Mm-hmm.
So not far at all.
Yeah.
I had actually never heard about Brandon Swanson until one of my coworkers recommended me look into him a couple weeks ago, but you said that you've heard about him for a while.
Yeah, I've seen a few different, I think maybe unsolved mysteries, which I kind of grew up with and got me into all this stuff to begin with. They have a new one on Netflix, and I think that was one of the episodes, and I've heard a few podcasts and things on it. So, but I think it's a case that even though it's a while ago, it's just getting more and more attention now, which is interesting. So hopefully we can contribute to that in a good way.
Yeah, so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
All right, so Brandon was born on January 30th of 1989 in Marshall, Minnesota. He was born to Brian and Annette Swanson. He graduated from Marshall High School in 2007, and following graduation, he decided to go to college at Minnesota West Community and Technical College in Canberra to study wind turbines.
Cool.
Yeah. Classes ended for the year on May 13th, 2008, and there were parties going on to celebrate. His friends state that he was drinking, but not enough to make him visibly intoxicated. Just before midnight, Brandon took off and was headed home to Marshall. It was about a 30-minute drive from Canby to Marshall. While heading home, Brandon drove off the road and was stuck in a ditch. He wasn't hurt and had called his parents around 2 a.m. and asked for them to come and pick him up. Annette and Brian got in their truck and drove out to where he believed that he was. While they drove, they stayed on the phone with Brandon. Occasionally, the call would drop, but they were able to get reconnected. When they got in the area, Brandon was with his car, and he decided to flash his lights to signal his parents where he was at. Annette and Brian didn't see or hear anything, though. Brandon eventually gave up and told his parents that he would walk to the lights that he could see in the distance. He believed that the lights were near Lind and told Brian to go to the parking lot of a bar there and wait for him. Brandon agreed and stayed on the phone with Brandon as they drove to the bar. About 47 minutes into the call, Brandon suddenly exclaimed, quote, "Oh shit," and the phone went dead. Brian stated that there was nothing after that. Brian and Annette searched for Brandon for 3 hours, and when they didn't find anything, they decided to call the police. According to Annette, quote, "They took our call and started to take down basic information. As soon as they got his age, they literally told me he has the right to be missing. I knew it was wrong. I know Brandon, I'm his mother, and I knew something was horribly wrong." End quote. Later that morning, the Lynn police started a search but didn't find anything. They then requested a local sheriff to assist them, and he found that Brandon was actually calling from Taunton?
Yeah, I think it's Taunton.
Taunton.
Yeah.
Okay. I have never heard of that before.
I have not either. I've heard of Marshall, but I haven't heard of all the other smaller towns, around there.
No, I've heard of Lind, but Taunton.
Well, we're expanding our Minnesota geography here. So
there we go. So he was there along State Highway 68, which was about 25 miles from where Brandon thought that he was. The police searched this area and were able to find Brandon's abandoned car in a ditch. They weren't able to find any tracks from Brandon to figure out what way he went. Police were able to track from cell phone towers to where he was closest to, and they were able to figure out what they believed Brandon was seeing. Police deployed ground searches, which included search dogs from the Twin Cities and an aerial team. The dogs found a trail that led to an abandoned farm. They then led searchers to the Yellow Medicine River. Brian did remember that Brandon told him that he was passing fences and heard water nearby. Investigators then had a theory that Brandon may have drowned, so they deployed boats to look. And they also walked around the riverbanks looking, but nothing was discovered. Every day for the next 30 days, the sheriff continued to walk about 2 miles of the river. Search parties slowed down, but resumed that fall after harvesting. Again, nothing was found. Annette does not believe that Brandon drowned in the river despite the dog's findings and then his last known words. The dogs continued from the river to another gravel road and continued to the Yellow Medicine County line, and then the trail ended. Annette told CNN that there isn't anything to indicate that he is in the river. Brian also recalled that if he was drinking, he didn't seem to be impaired. He didn't seem disoriented or confused at any point during the phone call. His parents also don't believe that Brandon would have intentionally disappeared. The sheriffs couldn't rule out foul play. There was no evidence of it, though, and he speculates that someone could have been in the shadows and got him. After searches slowed down, Annette was still stuck on the response of the Lynn police that Brandon had the right to be missing. Both Annette and Brian started a lobby for authorities to investigate a missing adult as soon as it was reported, basically doing what is required of a potentially abducted child. Annette knew that it wouldn't help Brandon, but it could help save someone in the future. Mary Seifert, a state house representative, introduced a bill called Brandon's Law. This law would amend Minnesota's existing missing child program from child to person. The bill passed both houses in May of 2009, and Governor Tim Pawlenty signed this into law. The change also required police to also determine if the person is in a potentially dangerous circumstance. Then they would also have to notify other law enforcement agencies promptly. Police would no longer be able to refuse a report based on a belief that there was no criminal activity involved. The law took effect in July of 2009, and since 4 other states have passed similar laws. And then into the theories. Did you want to start on them, or do you want me to go into
No, go ahead. We'll just kind of chat back and forth.
All right. So, theories. Some authorities believe that Brandon most likely fell into the water, made it back out, and likely died of hypothermia since the temperature was below 40 degrees that night. Authorities figured that Brandon could have walked anywhere within a 122 square mile, and that's hard to say what way he went from that.
And I think the dogs, like they tracked him to the Yellow Medicine River, and then they tracked on the other side of that, showing that, which would kind of debunk the drowning theory a little bit, and then because he, was on the other side of it as well. But then they stopped like in a farmer's field, that was like as far as they went. But the weird thing about that theory is they found nothing about him. I mean, they didn't find a shred of clothing. They didn't find a cell phone, anything that would show any sign, a wallet, keys, anything. And so you would think if he fell in the river, got out, had hypothermia, that like they would have found his body, or something, anything that would pertain to him, and so that even though it's like an easy theory, the circumstances don't really fit with that,
I agree. Yeah. I mean, you have dogs leading them in and out. So
if they just led directly to the river, that would be one thing, or if they led out, and you'd think they would find something to where the dog stopped, and they didn't find anything, know. So yeah. that I don't know about that one. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it seems like a plausible thing for sure, but
Yeah.
and the other thing too, I think that's interesting is, this was 2008,
Mm-hmm.
and cell phones back then, they weren't waterproof. So I mean,
No.
if he did slip and fall in the river, it would make sense that like his phone could have got swept away, or
Mm-hmm.
lost. And it wasn't like today where you can have a phone that can still work even though it's flowing down a river. So
Right.
that makes
Right.
it harder to track as well. But they never found a phone or anything
Mm-mm.
either.
No. I mean, especially, it's at night. He said that there's fences. He climbed over fences. Like, you would have think like something got snagged or something,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
even if it was like this tiny piece, I don't know, whatever he was wearing, his clothes, maybe it was like these teeny tiny fibers,
Hmm.
something.
Well, and even along his path, because he was cutting through fields, he was going through brambles, and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You'd think you would see like indentations of his path,
Yeah.
of what he knocked down, footprints in the mud,
They
because
didn't
there's
find
muddy
anything.
areas around all that. They didn't
Yeah.
find any footprints or anything,
No.
which, it just, I don't know. I mean, you'd think they would find something that would at least show the direction he was going. I mean, they have the
Mm-hmm.
cadaver dogs, or
Right. Right.
the search dogs, but they don't have any physical evidence that shows that he was even
No.
there.
No. And I mean, you would think it's not like they didn't delay the search super super long, so it's not like a month went by,
Yeah,
you know. You would think that there would be some footprint somewhere.
somewhere. I did hear something that the road, that his car was off on in the
Mm-hmm.
ditch. That road, they did have a scheduled like regrading of the road, like the
Oh,
county or the city or whatever. So they did regrade that road like the day after, which,
okay.
I mean, ideally they would have communicated and hopefully been like, let's hold off on the,
Right.
regrading, but that would have totally wiped away um, car prints, tracks, anything like that,
For
just for the
sure.
road itself.
Yep.
So that unfortunately was like a tough coincidence because it could have wiped away a lot, whether there's
Mm-hmm.
another car, whatever,
Right. Right.
But yeah, you'd think that beyond the road, you would see a lot more
Mm-hmm.
evidence of him at least even being there. And
Yeah.
we just don't see that.
I mean, even if you think about the river too, like he clearly, there's an entrance point and an exit point from what the dogs say.
Hmm.
So thinking about that, along the river, it's going to be damp, it's going to be wet,
Muddy.
muddy. There's going to be some sort of imprintation. Even like you or I, if we went into the river, we walked out, you would see our footprints for a
Yeah,
while.
at least coming out of the river, at
Yeah.
least going towards the river, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So that is strange too. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
like he literally just disappeared and no shred of evidence, even
Mm-mm.
footprints or anything.
Yeah.
So yeah,
It's wild.
it
It's,
is.
yeah. Um, Another theory suggests that Brandon may have orchestrated his own disappearance. It's possible that he left the area and is now living with a new identity. It's not likely, though, because he was calling his parents to be found.
Yeah. And so, I mean, the ideas of either self harm or wanting to,
Mm-hmm.
disappear, it doesn't make sense that
No.
that they would spend 45 minutes on the phone, and he was like getting frustrated with his parents because they
Yeah.
couldn't find him, and because partly he thought he was in a different place than he was,
Mm-hmm.
and so they were searching in an area where he wasn't. And so yeah, I think it's unlikely that he would
Mm-hmm.
feign that much like trying to be found and all of that
Right.
stuff, and trying to get his parents to help him if he was trying to do some elaborate hoax to disappear. So yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's possible that somebody picked him up in a car
Mm-hmm.
and they drove off somewhere,
It
but
is.
it just seems unlikely given his circumstances and the way he was communicating with his parents. And his parents
Exactly.
didn't think anything was wrong beyond the fact that he was lost and his car was in the ditch.
Yeah. He wasn't acting weird or
No,
nothing.
leading up to
Yeah.
it, he wasn't either. And it seems weird that he would go to a party and celebrate with friends and everything,
Mm-hmm.
celebrate the fact that he was done and all that stuff. To then like hours later in the middle of the night, just like vanish and start a new
Right.
life. I mean, that just, it doesn't add up in my mind anyways,
Mm-mm.
so I don't
No.
know about that one.
Yeah. I don't know about that one either. That it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Another theory that was from Minnesota's Unsolved Cases is that Brandon was either abducted or was involved in a hit and run where the driver panicked and disposed of his body. There's no evidence for this one, though, but that's one of the theories.
And that's possible as well, but it seems like he wasn't. It seems like the evidence we have, or at least like of what he was telling his dad and parents on the phone, was that he wasn't on the road. He was like off the road, because he had left his car and started walking across fields and everything, so I guess it would seem weird that unless you like made it to another road, somewhere,
That's
which
what
is
I was
possible,
thinking.
but I don't know it.
Yeah.
And that one's certainly possible, I guess.
Yeah.
But, they searched and they didn't see any sign of a struggle. On the phone, you'd think you would have something besides him just exclaiming, you'd think that there would be something.
I mean, my thought with this one is kind of what you said, like, unless it was another road, like we know he's walking to these lights, right? Which is probably another town. If, he could have dropped his phone in the river, but continued toward the lights. What if he made it to another road and then that's when that happened?
Possible.
Yeah.
When they lost contact with him, it could have been that nothing happened to him at that moment, but his phone got dropped into something, so that is possible too.
Because even if he got hit, like his parents would have heard something else.
That's the thing.
Wouldn't have just
or if
died.
There was a gunshot, or there was, anything like traumatic happening, or even getting hit by a car or something, you'd think you would hear that through the phone, You
would have heard something.
Yeah.
Because even if, say he got hit, even if, he got hit and the phone got run over and it was dead, they would have heard something on the phone before the phone crapped out.
Exactly. And that's the one thing I don't know is, like, did the phone immediately die? Like he said, oh shit, did the phone immediately cut out, or was there some time where the phone was still connected that that they couldn't hear him, but like the phone was still on before it cut out?
Yeah. From what I saw Brian said, it sounded like he said, oh shit, and then there was nothing after that. It was like the silence. I don't know when it fully like died.
Like whether the phone, and I know they tried to call him back too. So I don't know if they like the phone was still on and they hung up and called him back, or if like the phone itself ended the call,
Yeah. That part I don't know.
Yeah. That's all the stuff I've seen. They don't clarify that well,
Yeah. A Reddit theory I found has to do with farmers. So there were many private farms in the area. The theories are that he passed out on a farm and was found by a farmer, and then they disposed of him. Another is that he passed out on a farm and was accidentally ran over by some machinery, or that he wandered onto a farm and was murdered by someone protecting their property.
Which, I mean, all of those seem plausible, although you'd think you would find some evidence of that, especially if it was the one where he got run over by like a combine or something. Yeah. You'd think there would be some evidence that the dogs or something would hit on, whether it's, a bone or blood or whatever, or a shred of clothing that still is there. You'd think you'd find something with that. And they haven't found any of that, So, I mean, it is possible that somebody abducted him, a farmer or something, just took him completely away from there along with all trace. But I don't know.
Yeah. Last one that I have is that he was wandering and it was so dark that he stumbled upon a well and fell into it.
Which is possible, and a lot of, I mean, this is old farms out in, Southwest Minnesota, and a lot of them did dig their own wells back 100 years ago plus. Yeah. But I think I looked into that one a little bit, and what I found was a lot of those wells either weren't open, like there's nothing that you could actually fall into, or like the opening was small, so it wasn't like
it was too small for him to
fall down. Too small
for
for a grown man to fall into, and I mean, even, and I think there's even a law that you have to, whether people follow it or not, but like if
Mm-hmm.
there's an old abandoned well or cistern, you have to cover it over,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd think most people would do that on their property. I mean, who
Yeah.
wants just like an open hole on their property,
Well, especially all it takes is you lose your balance near it, and there
Yeah,
you
and you go
go.
in,
Yep.
So I mean that certainly is possible, but again, you'd think like the dogs would have led them to a hole in the ground,
Mm-hmm.
if that's what happened.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. That one seems interesting too, but I don't know if I yeah, and that's the hard thing with this case is none of the theories make total sense,
No, and there's no evidence suggesting one or another,
Yep. Yep. And I mean, there's another theory that I saw, which of course, this is always a theory in cases like this was like some sort of supernatural thing or alien
Alien
abduction or
abduction.
something,
Absolutely.
but there's no, I mean, and again, like it's hard to, to think about that with a rational, mind and everything, but there was no like sign anywhere, like in the fields or any of that stuff of like, some craft or radiation or like air blowing down or anything that would
Yeah.
show that like some spaceship, was there.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
um, that's hard too, because in some of the other famous alien abduction cases, there's actually like some physical evidence, whether it's, stuff being tamped down around it or like trees having radiation burns
Mm-hmm.
or things like that,
Yeah.
and there's nothing that would show that in this case, at least in the search area, which was pretty
Mm-hmm.
extensive. So
Yeah.
as much as I I think it's fascinating to think about alien abductions and everything. I don't know that this case is like a good example of thinking
Mm-mm.
about that.
Yeah. I mean, when I think about that, I think about like in the Dyatlov Pass. I don't know how much you know about
Yeah.
that,
Yep.
but how the tops of the trees were burnt.
Yep.
Like there's something that is like there's a potential for an
Yeah, at
alien
least you can
abduction.
open the door to being like
Yeah.
something here that's unexplained happened. Like we can at
Yeah.
least
And
not
like the
explain how
radiation.
the trees did this or how there's mashing down of this area of
Mm-hmm.
brush or whatever, a giant circle or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like in this case there's any physical evidence to point that maybe there's an outside force.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. And I mean, a lot of people think like he drowned, he fell in the
Mm-hmm.
river, drowned, which would make the most sense, just from,
Yeah.
a logical perspective. But they actually put grates in the river, like down, like way
Oh.
downstream of it.
Yeah.
So that way, if anything, whether it was him or cell phone or shoe or anything floated down river, they would like catch
Hmm.
that before it, kept going.
Wow.
And they
They
never
never
caught
found
anything. They
anything.
never found anything with that. And I
Interesting.
mean, most people, if they, not always, but most people, if they fall in a river or they drown, like their body shows up eventually,
It washes up.
yeah,
Yeah.
or at least clothes or, bones or
Mm-hmm.
something, over time comes. And I mean, we're almost 17 years later and nothing has been found. So that's a hard one to think about too. And especially since, the dogs, um, didn't lead just to the river. They led to the river and beyond. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the only cases that I can think of where people don't wash up are like the cases that, like the one that I did with Jamie on the Green River Killer, how he
Hmm.
went and actually took one and tacked her down to the bottom of the river.
Yeah, yeah. So, but that wouldn't just be a simple drowning either. That would
It wouldn't
require
be.
foul
Yeah.
play,
Mm-hmm.
and all that stuff, and so that's almost like putting two theories in one, which
Yeah.
is possible, that it wasn't just him drowning, it was somebody doing it. So yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I mean, my gut tells me that maybe there was foul play of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
because all the other theories of just like a natural accident and stuff don't have much evidence to support that.
No.
Um, but we also don't have much evidence in itself of foul play. I mean, there's
Yeah. Yeah.
no, and like you said before, you'd think he would have, before the phone cut out or something, you would have heard a sound, you would have, or he would have said a car's coming, or
Yeah.
I can ask for directions or something. If you saw
Yeah. Yeah.
another human being, and you're lost, you'd think, if anything, you'd be grateful for that. And he
Mm-hmm.
never said that to his parents at all.
Yeah.
So
Grateful or scared or whatever it
something,
might be.
yeah, something. I
Some
mean,
sort of
if
reaction.
if I'm lost and I'm on the phone with my parents, I'm going to be kind of narrating, what's going on, and he never
Yeah.
said anything that would lead them to believe that another human being was there,
Right.
So yeah. What do you think? I mean, if you had to kind of guess on what would be most probable, what do you think?
The theory that's really sticking with me is the someone came by, like he made it to another road, someone came by and grabbed him.
Mm-hmm.
That, in my mind, obviously we don't know, but in my mind, that's the one that's sticking out the most to me.
Yeah.
How about you?
I mean, yeah, I think it's hard because again, we have no evidence for that. And it was
Yeah.
3 o'clock in the morning too. So, I
Yeah,
mean, how many
no,
people, even murderers or serial killers or whatever, like how many of them are driving out on back roads in
not
the middle of
many.
farm country at 3 in the morning, but it would make sense with all the lack of evidence of any
Mm-hmm.
other thing,
Yeah.
that somehow somebody got him and took him away from there and
Mm-hmm.
then, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that I would say if I had to put money on it, it would be that somebody else was involved. And I mean, the farmer one could be too, that a farmer,
Could be, yeah.
found him in their field in the morning. He lost his phone, was cold from being in the river, got into a field. Farmer finds him, alive or not, and then disposed of him,
Mm-hmm.
somehow. But I don't know. I mean, that's a big secret to hide and a big, thing
It
to
is.
to hide evidence and everything too, and not leave any shred of clothing or anything, and so I don't know. That's a
Yeah.
tough one too. So I think
Well,
the other thing that was interesting that I learned is he was congenitally blind in his left eye.
oh,
So he only had like
okay.
one eye that really, worked well, and that
Hmm.
could definitely affect his depth perception. His, especially if it's dark, especially if we don't know how much he drank, but he obviously had
Mm-hmm.
some alcohol in the system,
Yeah.
and it's dark, and you only have one eye that's working well,
Mm-hmm.
so that could definitely affect his ability to navigate and travel
Yeah.
and do stuff. So,
And I mean that would definitely make more sense for how he ended up in the ditch too.
yeah, just
Mm-hmm.
the driving part of it, out in
Yeah.
the middle of farm country in the dark.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, yeah, even taking alcohol out of it, like you only have one normal eye.
hmm
And then, I mean, your depth perception is way off and it's dark. And in the
yeah,
middle of farm country, it is pitch black.
yeah,
Pitch black.
yep.
There's
There's not even
nothing.
street lights or
No.
any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I do think it's interesting too that he was really far away from where he thought he was and where he
Mm-hmm.
was telling his parents that he was. I
Yeah.
mean, I think because his parents were in Lind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's southwest of Marshall. And then northwest of Marshall was Taunton, where they found his car, and
Yeah.
Canby, where the school is and everything. Um, and so he wasn't even like in the same direction from home. And I mean,
Yeah.
if he lived in this area his whole life, I mean, lived in Marshall, went to school in Canby, correct?
Yeah.
You'd think that he's driven a lot around here and would know these towns and stuff. And so the fact that he clearly didn't know where he was strange to me as
Mm-hmm.
well. Yeah, that one, I
Yeah.
don't know. That is strange.
I mean, there is a possibility he was at a party even too. Who knows? I mean,
hmm
I know people were saying he didn't appear to be that intoxicated or that influenced, but I mean, as science has proven, like a person might not drink a lot, but their blood alcohol concentration is way higher than what you think it is. Like it's
Sure.
way over the legal
and
limit.
and some people can hide their inebriation really well too,
Yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that he was
No.
really drunk, but some people can drink a lot of alcohol, and from the outside they look like they're
Totally
fairly
fine.
sober, slightly
Yeah.
buzzed or whatever. And I guess he did have a DUI already
Oh,
before
did
that.
he?
And so they theorized that that's why he was taking like back roads and everything,
Mm,
as opposed to the main
main.
highway, which would have taken him directly through
Hmm.
Marshall and then to home.
So, and this is before, modern GPS on our
Yep,
phones.
yep.
So if he's taking back roads that he's not super familiar with, that could
That could be why
explain.
he was so far away from where he thought he was.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there's so many things and part of it is I don't know that this case would happen as much today in 2025, because we do have phones that are waterproof. We have GPS. We have, I mean, they can even, do GPS tracking everywhere your phone is. I mean, even if it was in a well or going down the river or whatever, they could find where that phone is. But we have to remember in 2008, I mean, it was,
they didn't have that.
no, I mean, we didn't have iPhones and, so, so it is tough in that way, but
it is crazy to think, though, that it did happen with the amount of technology that they did have, though, at the time.
Sure.
Because a lot of stuff that I talk about on here, it's usually older, like in the 50s, 60s, 70s, where this technology didn't exist.
Sure.
Yes, it's not what it is today, but they still had technology that they could use to find him, and they still weren't able to find anything.
Yeah. And that's just the shocking thing of this case, is that they didn't find anything. I mean, they found his car, but that was kind of the starting point of the whole mystery, was that his car went in the ditch. So they found that, but they didn't get much beyond that. So are you familiar with David Paulides and the missing 411 cases?
No.
So David Paulides is this guy who started looking into all of these people that would go missing and just vanishing, and most of them were in like national parks and things like that. And really freaky stories of people who were 100 feet away from their group of people. They were going down to the river to get water or doing whatever. And then they were 2 minutes later, their party comes down to look for them and they're just vanished, and they just do searches. They can't find any trace of these people. And that's kind of a hallmark of a lot of these missing 411 cases, is that they don't find any trace of the person, which just isn't usually how missing persons cases go, and so this almost, even though most of those cases take place more out in the wilderness, and less like, I mean, this wasn't in a city, but there still were towns and farms and houses and everything around. It really sounds like a missing 411 case where, and a lot of those cases, people were on the cell phone with somebody too, even, and the cell phone goes dead, and then they just vanish. David Paulides doesn't know. I mean, he's looked at all the theories too, from abductions, by humans to supernatural to whatever, and no one really knows. But listening and going over this case, it kind of reminded me of a lot of those missing 411 cases where people just vanish, and there's nothing. There's no trace of evidence. There's nothing. They're just gone. So
it's like he just vanished into thin air. It's wild.
And that's where, I mean, it's, the last theory you typically want to go to, especially without any evidence, is the alien abduction one, or some sort of supernatural, especially without any physical evidence, like we talked about before. But when somebody just vanishes into thin air, or at least it looks like that, we don't know, but it looks like that. It's hard to not at least wonder,
not jump to that.
Yeah. So,
I mean, when we don't have logic, our brains try to find something to grasp to that makes sense of something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that could be an answer, even if it's not, the first, second, or third most logical thing. So
yeah, we don't like things that aren't answered.
Yeah, exactly. So,
well, little side note here, Brandon is still considering a missing persons today. You can, if you have any information about him, you can call 911 or Lincoln County Sheriff's Office at 507-694-1664. And then up on our Instagram, if you want to go hop over there, we will have a picture of, they did an age progression photo, and we will have that over on our Instagram.
Cool. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, I mean, obviously a lot of these cases, every year that goes by, you're less likely to get answers about it, but not always. I mean, sometimes, somebody knows something, they saw something, they, their conscience comes out if it is a, foul play situation. And we have had cases, even in Minnesota, with like Jacob Wetterling and stuff, where somebody was missing for a long time and we thought we weren't getting answers, and eventually you do. So hopefully for the parents and the family, most of all, but also just for everybody who's knew him and is just interested in this case. Hopefully at some point somebody knows something and we get some evidence. So
absolutely. All right. Well, that is everything for today. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. All right. First recording session done.
Yeah, I like it. That was fun.